Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like or comment on my video. Consider subscribing to my channel, and if you dislike the content, please leave a comment. So, this video is actually not what was scheduled. I've actually been trying to talk out about a dozen players from quitting the game, and purely based on the test server and what they have been talking about on the test server, there's at least 60 to 70,000 players looking to quit the game. Now, the figures may seem very small, but in overall percentage, that's about 20% of active game players at one time zone. Now, that makes a massive difference to the overall play of the game, as the audience in the game has been declining slowly over time. With the introduction of more difficult PvE enemies and the reduction of rewards from PvE, players have had their limit with the game. So Eve Echoes has literally shot themselves in the foot. They literally are killing the biggest part of their audience, the PvE mains. Now, why do I say the PvE mains are the big part of the audience? The PvE mains no longer feel like it is going to be safe to travel in nullsec, so they no longer want to play the game. Number two, they feel that it is no longer worthwhile taking on events and missions because of the fact that rewards are going to be reduced. And they also feel that the difficulty increase is unfair on the way that the game has been played. I actually do agree with that. The devs need to introduce new missions and encounters at a higher level in order to make it feel fair. Now, why do I say they need to do this here? Because as it stands, some of the missions that you do are already ridiculously underpaid. And when I say underpaid, I mean destroying a Myrmidon for any one ship is destroying a 198 million ISK value vessel, and the reward of less than 1 million for its destruction is absolutely a slap in the face for anybody taking on that task. It's less than 0.5% of the value of that ship. And whether it is in PvE or PvP, it doesn't feel right to cheat a player in this way. And I am saying that it is cheating the player because their effort is no more diminished by the fact that they're fighting the ship in this mode than someone playing in PvP. Every PvP player has the advantage of taking offline, has the advantage of camping on a route where offline players will travel, and that is how they get their kills. That means it is zero effort, it is easy kills, and it is high gain ISK. If you are going to rat in high sectors, the travel times are ridiculously long, and with the introduction of these extra features such as interdiction spheres, they are now making it impossible to play easy PvE. There is no protection against the interdiction sphere, so you can't be using a warp stabilizer to get through it. You can't have auto warp protection by being an autopilot, and with all of these being added to the whole mess of the game, they have literally shut out the big majority of their gameplay. Now, when it comes to the difficulty level of some missions, yes, they don't seem so difficult because players are smarter than an AI. And yes, T10 missions weren't meant to be soloed by one person from the start of the game, but one person with enough intelligence can get up a ship in the right way to be able to play against the weaknesses and strengths of those enemies. Now, originally, what they said was they're going to give them better set equipment so that they can match the player. Now, players were going to be happy with that because facing off against drones and so forth in these missions means that you might pick up drones and you might pick up your warp disruptors and your missile launchers from the enemies that you are fighting. However, with the change in what they are doing right now, it doesn't leave the game fair to play. It leaves the game totally for PvP, and they have taken out the fairness of PvE. Now, this has really impacted badly, as I've already explained in the start, but there are more things that have been piling up to force this decision to go the way of leaving the game. The nullsec gates through PvE routes have really impacted negatively. Approximately 800 billion ISK worth of vessels have been destroyed through the syndicate route this week. And since it is not restored vessels, players feel that they are grinding too hard to make PvP too easy, and it makes the grind for the game way too difficult. Now, considering that this is a mobile game and not a PC game, they need to think about making a repair system, and they need to reduce the cost for a player to get back a ship. In other words, you mustn't start off from scratch going all the way back up. That is the only way to secure the PvE audience at this point. And if they had kept to making the game better for PvE and taken out those nullsec routes in this week's patch, instead of introducing a test server where they literally hit the majority of their gameplay, they wouldn't have had this negative feedback. Now, how bad is the negative feedback? The missile launcher majority game, the missile launchers are the majority of the game played weapons, and they cost I don't even want to explain how much they cost. The rapid missile launchers have the biggest value in the game. With just the words uttered that they're going to be nerfing it, they inspired at least 5% of the player base to quit the game. 5% by just touching on the topic. Eve needs to learn their lesson. You don't mess with the majority of your game. You mess with the minority. Make it easier for the majority. That is something they need to do at this point to keep the gameplay going. If you lose 60% of your audience to keep 40%, you have literally lost the majority of your audience. And from that 60%, yes, some of them will stay behind, but hurting the 60% with the first hit on the weapons was one thing that hurt them very badly. Being the smarter players, they chose wisely in the start of the game, and now you are punishing them for wise choices, which isn't the way to go for any company, because now at this point, those same players who chose wisely are now going to choose wisely to not support you in further endeavors within this game. You need to rethink it before you lose a larger chunk of those missile mains. Remember, you haven't yet introduced that update, so cancel it as soon as possible. Cancel the weapon nerf and updates. Cancel it on the spot so that you don't have any more negative feedback. Leave the missiles alone. We want to keep the audience. I don't care whether my weapon systems got nerfed all the way down to 0, but I don't want to lose the entire system, the entire play with the community. If the community goes, this game is worthless. And I'm not just talking from the point of YouTube, I'm talking from the point of me playing the game myself. I had at least 80 people talking to me on Discord today, talking about the fact that they are leaving the game because of the ridiculousness of playing in PvE. Because you can't go and PvP everywhere because you have ridiculously outclassed ships such as the Cinnabar, the Worm, in the PvP format, in the null sex, gate camping every gate through every possible route. And then in the low sex, you have a whole lot of people interfering with you when you're mining. And when it comes to the next part of this whole situation, dead space and anomalies have so much of RNG that if you destroy a ship which is really powerful using a heavy weapon or using something that you know is really OP and valuable like a warp disruptor, there is no chance of you actually getting it because they purposefully have made it a lower chance drop. So they literally hit the audience with nerf after nerf after nerf. And they have now angered the audience to the point where they want to leave the game. Now, losing gameplay in a mobile game standard isn't the way to go. If you do hurt your gameplay, you need to switch it around. And at this point, they're going to have to give back everything back to the start, like I said would happen if they started nerfing. The complaints will roll around and the game will start diminishing, and they'll eventually end up back to where they started. Now, my advice in this here is go back to the default, give warp protection to everybody, and allow the interdiction spheres in. It doesn't matter whether the warp fields are now going to be put in the game, and it was this purpose all along. The autopilot protection needs to be put back immediately. We need to secure that gameplay audience. Now, if you don't secure that gameplay audience, this is exactly what's going on. 5% of missile mains are quitting the game immediately based on the fact that their favorite missile is being interfered with. Now, that is without the update being passed in the official game itself. An additional 15 to 20% are of the opinion that if the rapid missiles get nerfed weaker than a long range missile, they will leave the game as well. And there is a strong possibility that all 20% will leave. That means 25% of the audience of the game is disappearing. Now, from this whole opinion, there is now a small group of players who are very happy with the play, and that is the PvP audience. The PvP audience who make up the minority of mainstream game players. Now, with the introduction of interdiction spheres, from the remaining 30%, not 30%, 70% of game players without the missile launcher leavers or those who are considering leaving, let's talk about the rest of the game. Now, because of the PvP aspect within the PvE zone, a lot of players are already angry and it is affecting a large chunk. Now, a lot of them are missile mains themselves, so we won't count them into this audience as a complete figure. I am going to reduce 30% from that number, so it's going to be about 4% of the audience are angry because of the nullsec gates that run through PvE shortcuts. So there is another problem, and that is to do with the autopilot protection being removed. You gave them the luxury in the start and you removed it without giving them a new luxury. You need to think of giving them something else that is going to help them if you want to continue with this. It is fine to lose 40% of your gaming audience, but losing 34% in an instant is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, following this, there is the whole audience who play PvE content and wander into nullsec to play in anomalies and so forth. Now, due to the introduction of interdiction spheres, approximately 20% of the gaming audience want to leave. Once more, I am going to remove 30% of this here as missile mains. Now let's remove that, and that will leave us at something near 14%. That will make it 48% of the gameplay audience leaving just because of the introduction of interdiction spheres, no protection, and a majority of favor to the aspect of PvP. You are losing more than half of your audience in an instant. And with this big loss, you have to think about the next loss that will follow. When players feel the game is empty and not working for them, you can lose another 50% of that audience. So literally you have killed 75% of the gameplay. Take back all of those updates. Say everything on the test server has failed with immediate effect. Publish it as hard as you possibly can and make sure that players don't feel the need to leave. Remember, you don't have the smallest audience ever. You have 2 million downloads. 75% of 2 million means 500,000 players. Wait, am I right on that figure? Yeah, 500,000 players are going to be left from a 2 million audience. And that isn't something I would be willing to risk to lose. I know that I have lost friends because of these small decisions that haven't yet even been implemented into the game. Players have been complaining about losing 70 to 80 billion ISK in terms of losing ships due to the fact that they are being gate camped while playing PvE. And this is something else that I did complain about last week when I personally was gate camped. And I did say that this was going to happen. Eve should be listening to their content creators, looking through the videos at the criticism of their game, and using this for immediate impact. Remember, content creators are listening to the audience of the game in a more broad perspective than your suggestion box. Your suggestion box are just those who are frustrated and will stay on at the moment, not those who are frustrated to the point that they are already thinking of leaving. Now, thinking of all of this, you need to work on more aspects of the game in a fair light. And if you want to introduce a little bit of these test servers, make sure that the test server doesn't impact gameplay. The test server itself lost you 5% of the audience just existing the way that it exists. People got upset and felt cheated. I did say it's like a big smack to the face of the audience. And yes, it is a big smack to the audience because we are being told to give up our official gameplay to go play on a test server to earn ISK, to test out the missions, and all that we're getting from it is nothing. I literally lost all my testers to the test server. That just says how bad this is. I am only 150 members in my audience and I have lost the majority of my testers. My testers were a group of about 20 people. There is 20 players leaving the game without even a valid reason to leave it as yet. And that is purely because NetEase and Scope have messed up Eve Echoes. And this is a massive mess up. They need to start working on it as hard as possible right now. You need to be buttering up that PvE audience because you focus too much on PvP and now you are literally hurting your game. Think about it carefully, rethink it, squash all of your updates and rethink what you are doing in the game at this moment. Your PvP is too overpowered for the PvE audience. They need protection, and you need to remove their ability to gate camp. This is a mobile game, not a PC game. Players do leave it alone for hours at a time, and you cannot expect a player to sit and wait 45 minutes to jump 45 gates just to be able to get what they want. And when they're offline, they still have a chance of losing their ships. You need better protection and you need better systems. Get rid of your current patch. Rethink this. We cannot afford to lose this audience. If this audience disappears for good, it is the end of your game before you even get started. You have made the biggest mistake in the form of any game ever. You literally shot your foot to try and save your game, and then when your game gets too difficult for PvP players, you're going to lose even more of that audience. And every time you nerf or update in that PvP little audience, you'll be doing it for 10,000 players. 10,000 players who most likely will be free to play hardcore players, and you will then have lost all your paying audience. Rethink, restart, and make sure that you are doing this the correct way. This is my message to Eve Echoes, because I do not want to lose this game. It is a fantastic game to play. I am part of both the PvP and PvE audience, and I want to be able to play both as much as possible. Right now I am in PvP, and yes, I don't show off my PvP kills. I actually will hide it if I ever open my menu to complain about losing a ship, because the reason for it will be the fact that I lost my ship to something which was not thought out well. So that's going to be it for this message. I hope that the devs see this video and respond to it in time.